I've got on the channel today a couple of watches and you're thinking they look exactly the same, but they're not. They're actually very, very different. And it took Hanhart over 50 years to finally make this watch available to the general public. You see, this watch was designed for the post-war pilots of the German Air Force, and there was less than 1,000 of these made. For a member of the general public to get one of these, it's almost impossible. And back then, Steve McQueen had this one on his wrist. How he got it, I have no idea, but there's plenty of photos of him wearing this 39mm Hanhart 417ES. Let's check it out. Now you're probably thinking that these watches are exactly the same, and yet they're not. Upon first inspection they do look very similar, but they're not. This one's a 42, this one's a 39, but this one is almost true to form from the original. And one of my viewers commented on a video that I did a few days ago. You see, I purchased a Tag Heuer Monaco. Steve McQueen had worn that in the movie Le Mans in 1971, and although that was a prop, a movie prop, because of the association of the movie and it looked pretty cool, I actually bought a watch. Not the original one or the original looking one with the crown on the left, but the crown on the right. But put that aside, Steve McQueen is pretty much one of my favorite actors because he's got such a screen presence, and I've seen his movies, I've loved him as an actor, and he wore this watch as one of his personal watches, as well as a Rolex 5512 that he was always photographed with. And the special thing about this Hanhart is the fact that, like I said, there was less than 1,000 of these made for the post-war German pilots. And that's pretty special for him to get his hands on one of these. And not only does this watch have pedigree because of its historical significance with the German aviation heritage, but also the fact that a movie star opted for one of these and wore it pretty much all of his life. So for me, and for a lot of enthusiasts out there, this is pretty special. Hanhart has released the 39mm, pretty much true to form, and you know what? It looks exceptional. It is absolutely phenomenal. But before I continue, you're probably thinking, Pete, how did you get these watches on the channel, especially the 39? No one's reviewed it yet, or not that I know of. Well, I want to say a big thank you to Defined Watches. Peter from Defined Watches is based up here in Australia, in Noosa, and you know what? He's got phenomenal watches. But not only that, he's an absolute gun. He's a gentleman. He goes, Pete, do you want to have a look at the 39? I said, mate, are you serious? Please send it down. And I'm glad that he sent it down, but he also sent me down the 42 because I get a chance to compare one to the other, side by side. There's a couple of reviews out there of the 42, the 417ES, as I've got here in my hand, but since the release of the 39, I think people are going to flock to that. Now if we look at the watches side by side and measure their dimensions, you can see that the 39mm is a little bit smaller in every area. They're both exactly 13.5mm in height, and that's to that box sapphire crystal. Below that they're about 11mm. So the wearing experience of both is fantastic. Now both come with a signed crown. It's a 6.8mm crown and it features 100 meters of water resistance, and the weight of the 39mm comes at 92 grams and the 42 comes at 105 grams. So there's a few variances in these watches, and the way they wear also reflects that. As you can see, I've got the 39mm here on my wrist. Fantastic footprint, sits really, really well, even with that lug to lug of 45.7, no issue. The height comes in at exactly 13.5, and that's the top of that box sapphire crystal. So it's a really pleasurable experience, just a vintage feel on the wrist, and accompanied with that bund strap, just a joy to behold. I really love what I'm seeing here. It's clean, simple, functional, and it does the job as intended for a pilot's watch. Now in comparison, the 42mm has got slightly more wrist presence. Even that lug to lug of 49.4 is a little bit longer. But in saying that, the height comes in at exactly the same size, and the comfort factor on this bund strap is wonderful. So looking at these watches side by side, the 39mm is more true to form to the original, although they both display a nice vintage feel. You really can't go wrong with either. They are such a nice vintage look. Now here's where it gets interesting. If you look at the dial, if you look at the 39mm, it says anti-magnetic at the 6 o'clock above the shockproof. And that's more true to form. And not only that, the layout, the spacing, it seems to be a little bit tighter and pretty much more to the original. Being a bicompact, the two registers at the 9 and at the 3, on the original they were a little bit spaced out, a little bit wider, but apart from that, studying this watch, there's so much to like about it, harkening back to that original 417ES. I tell you what, looking at that dial, I love the matte grain texture, the painted on Arabics. There's details in these watches that reflect back to the 50s, that era, even the Arabics. If you look at the 6, it's an open 6. The 4 o'clock, these are beautiful to observe. And that's why we buy watches, isn't it? There's detail, there's stuff that makes sense, there's stuff that we look at and you think, gee, I really am bonding with this, I'm enjoying this. And these are the little quirks that make watches like this special. Now the lume of both watches is C3 Superluminova, and it's doing a decent job. Even on that seconds hand, you can see going round, keeping accurate time. A real joy for a vintage inspired watch. Now did Hanhart skimp out on the movement in these watches? Did they throw an automatic movement in here? No. You see, the original was a hand-wound manual movement, and they've done the same here. Both of these feature a Sellita 510M hand-winding chronograph. Roughly 58 hours power reserve to comfortably get you through a couple of days. But I think the people that buy watches like this are hands-on. They want to press that button. They want to wind that watch. They want to turn that bezel. That's why we buy watches like this, because it gives us something to input back into the unit. And I love that. Now speaking of that bezel, it's a coin-edged finish like the original with a red marker on the top, and it always lines up. It always lines up because it's a friction fit and it's bi-directional. So it goes either left or either right, and wherever you place it, it's always going to line up. That's lovely. You're probably gathering from my voice that I like this watch. I've always liked this watch. It's a wonderful piece, but they've never been available to the general public. Hats off to Hanhart. I know it's taken over 50 years to finally make it available to us. Well done. Seriously, this is a great step forward for this company and for this watch. Not only in releasing the 42mm, but bringing the 39mm into play, the more true to form original. That's fantastic. Being Hanhart's most inexpensive and simplest chronograph, it's also the most desirable. This is the watch that everyone wants. Being worn on the wrist by the actor Steve McQueen, this thing's been made famous, and it wasn't a sponsored or a paid endorsement from Hanhart. He chose this watch. And you know what? It's understated, but it works. Hanhart was famous for making fantastic stopwatches, and when they got into wristwatches, they didn't disappoint. Here's a perfect example right here. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. I only had a little bit of time with these watches. I've got to send them back to Pete from Define. Again, thank you to him for sending these for me to have a look at. These are really cool. Been a joy handling, using, observing the details, the finishing. I encourage you guys, especially here in Australia, if you're interested in this watch, get on Pete's website, Define Watches. I'll leave the links in the description. He's happy to send out watches to me. I'm happy to give him a free plug. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know your thoughts about Hanhart or even this watch here, the 417ES 39mm. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a joy. Thank you once again, and we'll see you all in the next video.